Greetings, my magnificent ones. Sue Paulson here, your magnificence mentor. Welcome to Heaven on Earth. This series is all about exploring how we get away from the little pockets of hell on earth that we seem to be mired in at times and reach for and reach out to the heaven that not only do we so deserve, but I think deep down we really want. A few years ago, I had a session with a spiritual channel that said to me, Sue, we're happy to see that you are in your boat paddling downstream because you used to paddle upstream. Well, I couldn't help but grin because that's exactly true. I've spent a lot of my life paddling upstream. It's hard and it's tough. Eventually, in a variety of ways, I would reach my destination worn out and absolutely exhausted. But the exuberance I felt in having achieved that goal and having, despite all odds and despite how hard it was, that I got there and I'm going, woo-hoo! So I'd be all excited and just doing this little dance of joy once I got out of the boat. You know, you don't want to rock the boat. Get out of the boat and I'm doing this dance of joy. I made it. I made it. All by myself. I did it. Well, paddling upstream, though, is hard. When I was younger, it didn't seem to take as much effort, but as I gained in years and a little wisdom along the way, I began to wonder if maybe paddling downstream would be simpler, would be easier. What would happen if I just went with the flow, just allowed myself to just gently work down the current and downstream to a destination? Well, it was interesting in this session that even though Spirit was quite happy with me paddling downstream instead of upstream, it also suggested that perhaps I might want to consider putting my paddles in the boat and allowing the current to carry me wherever it would. Well, that was a scary notion to me. I'm going, what? You mean not be in any kind of control whatsoever? Just letting life take me where it's going to take me? Whoa, I don't know about that. So there was some hesitation and a little trepidation about that possibility. And yet it was kind of intriguing to me. Well, they gave me a little more information at that point that helped me understand why putting my paddles back in the boat and just allowing myself to go with the flow was going to be beneficial. And they said, from where you sit, your vantage point, you can only see what's right in front of you. You know, you see the rocks in the stream and the flow of the water, and you can see a certain distance downstream, but maybe there's curves and bends that are there that you don't see. And they said, from our perspective here in the universe, we can see the whole vista. We see what's coming up for you, and we know that if you go with the flow, if you allow the current to take you, then there are possibilities that open up for you that will be far more beneficial than if you come to your own maybe fork in the stream where there's rushing water and you don't know whether you should paddle right or paddle left or how to get through or around this obstacle in front of you. And just by allowing the current to take you in the flow of least resistance, then exciting possibilities open up. Well, I had a good think about that. I thought about it a long time because it didn't seem, I like the idea of it, but it seemed pretty risky to me. Except on the other hand, I thought, well, how risky is going against the flow and exhausting myself to the point of not being able to go 1 inch further. Maybe it's time to make a shift. So I wanted to talk about this today because there's an interesting, I'm not sure if balance is the right word, but let's go with balance for a moment. There's an interesting balance between deliberately moving yourself forward and easing into and surrendering to the flow of what's going on. Now, when we're young, we have this inner drive to really achieve things and conquer, whether it's tying our shoelaces for the very first time. That I grew up before Velcro, obviously, or finally learning how to write the alphabet or print the alphabet so that it was readable. All of these little achievements along the way. It was hard to get there because it took effort. It took a combination of understanding and muscle movement and coordination and all those kinds of things that we didn't seem to have a whole lot of control over. So it was as if we had to wrestle with all of these various pieces in order to have the result that we wanted. Well, of course, we look at someone else who did it easily, achieved whatever it was that we wanted to achieve it, and it just seemed effortless to them. Well, why did it seem effortless? Well, chances are pretty good that they went through their own struggles to get there. And so, of course, it was easy. When our son was old enough to go bowling, we took him bowling, and he found it endlessly frustrating because his parents could bowl way better than he could. Well, we'd had probably more than 30 years of experience at that point. Not that we bowled that often, but we knew how, and we'd experienced getting a few strikes along the way, and just learned how to do it. For him, it was all new, but he still wanted the result, even though the ball was heavy and he didn't know how to throw it properly, and on and on. So there was this interesting challenge in his own head. Well, why can't I do it? They can do it, and it's so easy for them, and it's so hard for me. Well, that's part of life, right? That's part of facing newness and facing things that we've never done before, and then working through them. There's no question that there's a huge euphoric rush that comes from overcoming something, that comes from moving through or past obstacles and winning out on the other side, that feels particularly good. The interesting thing, though, is it can become an addiction to that rush that we get when we've conquered all. And we forget that maybe there's an easier way. Maybe there's some every bit as much satisfaction in being able to hit the easy button and say, well, that was easy. And then, and experiencing a similar sort of feeling in a job well done that didn't take as much time. It didn't take as much effort. It just was easy. I'm not sure our society is wired that well for easy, because I know there are times when I have felt guilty because something just came so easily to me, whether it was a talent, whether it was it didn't take me long to master a skill, and I'd see other people struggling, and they'd look at me and they'd say, well, Sue, why is it so easy for you? I'm going, well, I don't know. It just is. And I felt kind of guilty that I wasn't right in there in the trenches with them, struggling along, as if that's the only way that anything can be accomplished or anything that can be achieved. I would bet that a lot of the most beautiful music that we hear was as a result of the musicians being in the flow of the music, that the composer captured a piece of this loveliness because they were open to it, because they surrendered to what the music wanted to tell them. Same thing with beautiful art, same thing with stories in books that you've read that just grabbed a hold of you. Well, it doesn't mean that there wasn't effort involved in getting there, but at some point when we surrender to whatever is more than us, it adds a dimension of glory to the whole thing that is particularly satisfying, and really, I think, another little step on the path to heaven on earth. Because let's face it, if we don't need to spend a horrendous amount of time or effort struggling with something, if there's an easier way and we choose the easier way that's going to give us the same result, why wouldn't we do that? Because it then frees up all kinds of time to do things that we would really enjoy. So I think it's important that we look at what it is we're faced with in the moment and say, am I making this harder than it needs to be? Or what if there were an easier way? What if? And then when we open up to that, when we open up to the possibilities that there are in the universe and say, okay, help me, support me in what I'm doing. So I've learned to have a solid faith in the idea that the universe has my back, that what happens for me, not to me. Even in the most adverse of times, the biggest adversities that I've ever faced, there still was this behind the scenes knowing that this is going to turn out. This is going to be for your benefit in some way. It may not be what I had envisioned. It may be quite different than that. But I've had enough evidence over time that it turned out way better in the end because I surrendered to it. So sometimes I think the easy path is the road less traveled these days. We're fraught in our society with struggles and the idea of we must conquer or win out over or get some gain at someone else's expense, when in fact we're wired to be cooperative, we're wired to work together. Well, does it mean, so let me give you an example. When I was years ago, I wrote a book on public speaking, and we decided that we would add a video to accompany this public speaking book so that readers could actually see how some of the information was going to unfold. So I'm giving some suggestions of here's how you do this. And then I had this amazing group of volunteers who said, okay, we'll demonstrate that for you. And so they would. So this was a project that was huge. I had some idea of how to write the material, and I had experience in teaching others how to speak in public, but I didn't know much about the whole video thing. And this was in the days, this was long before YouTube. So we're talking 2003. So, or 2002, I guess, when we were shooting the video. So this was long before the technology was there to make it really easy. There were steps we had to take. And at the time, the best device that we had to demonstrate the video, to show the video clips, was a CD-ROM. And it only had so much capacity. It would only, you could only put so many video clips on there, and then it was full. So we went with whatever we had to work with. Well, it took a number of people who had expertise and support and contributions in areas that I couldn't do all by myself in order for this book to come out, and to come out in the way that it did. Did it make my achievement in getting this book published any less because I had all that help? No. In fact, it made it richer because I felt so blessed to have had this opportunity to work with all these people to create something that was far more than what I could have done all by myself. So that's the road that I want to travel these days. Is I want to, you know, take my easy button right along with me and say, okay, I'm faced with this project. How do I make it easier? Is there some way that's better than the way I have in my head, or the little bit that I know about that? How can I speed up the time that it takes me to do something by surrendering to the easiest, most effective route possible? And lots of times I don't know what that is. So sometimes it means I sit and wait. Sometimes it means I say, no, I'm not doing that because I only know the hard way. So I'm waiting for an easier way for that to happen. And it's hard at times, all right, because I want to pick up my paddle and work away, work away, work away. Well, and I've learned when I do that, when I needed to be waiting, when I needed to be allowing things to reveal themselves, when I needed to surrender to something bigger than I was, then the result was not good. And I ended up frustrated and out of sorts because I didn't get the result I wanted. And I might as well have just followed my own instincts and sat there and just waited, or played around a golf, or went dancing, or something like that, and then come back and look at it again. So that's a focus that I think is important for us to look at in the whole, how we go from here. Because at each stage of life, it was okay that I struggled mightily when I was younger, because I learned that, yeah, you can get things through struggling. But then at some point, I grew so tired of the struggle. It seemed so much. And I kept asking myself, well, here I am struggling mightily. It's taking so long to get the results. When do I get the goodies? When am I going to be able to taste some level of triumph or success beyond what I'm currently mired in? Like, when does that happen? A lot of it boiled down to getting to the point where I could say, well, what if I just surrender this idea to the help that is out there and be open to entertaining what comes in? And when I do that, wow, I'm so impressed. And then I get to do lots more little dances of joy, because it manifested in a way that I never dreamed it would. And it was validation that's a better route for me. Does it mean I'm going to quit struggling and learning and wanting to achieve? No, not at all. It just means that I freed up some time to allow more things to come in. And I guess it brings me some variety, which I always crave, is a little variety. And then my accomplishments seem to stack up, instead of being okay, I accomplished this, and then there was a long time in between this. And so now they're accumulating faster because I'm open to allowing it to happen. You know you can do this too because you're that magnificent. If you want a little more heaven on earth for you, if this resonates with you, if this fits for you, then see what happens when you put your paddles in the boat and just allow the stream to take you down. Now, you may grip the sides like I did for a little while, just, I don't know how this is going to work. and that's okay. I had to resist picking up those paddles many, many times, and I still resist sometimes. Oh, I want to pick up that paddle so badly. Just go have a cup of tea, take a deep breath, let the boat carry you down the river to the best life that you could ever imagine. You deserve this. Believe me, you deserve this. If you're enjoying the Heaven on Earth series, or you're curious about my Tea with Sue series, I invite you to subscribe to my channel. There's a variety of topics on there that you can tap into and listen to. I also have an app called The Magnificence Mentor, which is a free download from the Google Play or the Apple Store. It's free to sign up as a member. There's lots of video content on there, some written content on there as well that you can take with you on your phone or on a tablet. Thank you for joining me today. I wish you such delight on your journey towards more heaven on earth, and we will look forward to being together next time.